All right, everybody. Hello, and welcome to the second stream for the Mania 7Q World Cup 2022. Today, we will be going over the qualifiers results. It's going to be very interesting, and then following the qualifier results, we'll be going into our round of 16 map pool. Like we said last week, not 32. We will only have 16 teams in the bracket stage. I am Toph Daddy, one of your commentators for this qualifier results showcase, and I am joined here by Underjoy yet again. How's it going?
Hello, what's up? I'm so excited about the results, and I'm probably more excited about the showcase because
yeah. I mean, I just got the results of the qualifiers, and there's some interesting results here that I personally wasn't expecting. I know a lot of other people weren't expecting as well.
Yeah, honestly, this year is so unpredictable. Yes, this is first MWC in 7K from a long time, but still, teams are so close and they are so diverse in skill sets. It's hard to predict what will gonna happen.
Yeah, for sure. But I think without further ado, we'll be starting to get into the qualifier showcase, starting at seed 33, which is going to be India, a two-person team, but unfortunately not going to be able to push their way into the bracket stage, being our last seeded team. Looks like doing their best on the fourth Rice qualifier, and as well as the second long note qualifier. So pretty good at density as far as they were concerned, just not matching up to the other teams.
Yeah, sadly just SyphoS playing pretty much by himself, holding the level.
Yeah, very nice to see teams like India coming out and joining to participate, but they will not be able to move on to the bracket stage, nor will anyone until we get to number 16. But for now, we can move on to the 32nd seed, Romania.
Yeah, Robbie is going to carry this one, but sadly they weren't able to cut it into the round of 16. Yes, yeah, pretty much all
quite enough of a carry performance to get them where they needed to be. Doing best on the tech map, getting pretty good accuracy overall, but just similarly not enough to make it through. And at the 31st seed, we're going to see Denmark, another two-person team. So far we've been seeing a lot of smaller teams, not full teams of 4 players, which is definitely going to be, a hindrance to whether you're going to be able to switch people out based on their weaknesses, and that's proving to be quite an issue for some of these teams down at the bottom.
Exactly, they just have to give their best from themselves, and they don't have any chance to switch for someone else.
Yeah, and then next on our list is number 30, seed 30. It's going to be Norway. Our first full team, Masia, RS Fast, Androma, and TB, not being able to put up the scores, but, putting scores where they needed to. Scarlet Tempest, 1.8 million, probably their best score out of their qualifiers up to that point. But just, not having the high-end skill that they needed to push themselves, especially with how difficult these qualifiers were. I think we need to really restate how difficult all these maps were to play.
Exactly. You can see, especially in the log notes, you can see how low the scores are. There are like 400,000. Not very much.
Yeah, but we're going to be seeing... I think that kind of stays the trend for a while. The LNs just end up being very difficult. Coordination with 7K tends to do that for you. But moving forward, our number 29 seed is Belgium, another European team. We're getting a lot of European teams out of the way early here. But moving on up and above, their LN scores, quite a bit better than what we've been seeing. 1.7 million, 1.6 million. Definitely starting to get up there, and those are some very solid scores for those LN qualifiers.
Yep, certainly. This team is more all-rounded, but sadly they weren't good enough. Maybe next year.
Yeah, it's always good to see these teams, and we'd love to see all of them come back even stronger next year. Hopefully we see a lot of 7K teams really coming back strong and keeping this key mode popular. It's good to... I'm surprised to see even 33 teams coming out, given how we've seen the community, shrink a little bit since 2019 when the last World Cup happened for this. But that's going to be seed 29. Seed 28 is going to be Portugal. Another 3-person team. Rodriguez not going to be able to carry their team to victory here, getting average scores across the board as far as their placements. 27th on Scarlet Tempest, as well as Hanapaganda and Intuition. So their hybrids kind of looking a bit stronger than the rest of them, but I think in general they're just pretty even across the board.
Yeah, just mostly Rodrigo carrying, and even though the scores are pretty all around the board, pretty much equal, so good job.
Yeah, and number 27 is, for me, this is kind of a surprise. I wasn't sure about the players on this team, but Singapore is historically a very, very strong 7-key team, getting 12th place in our previous 7-key World Cup. And their 4-key game is also extremely good, but being down at the 27th seed, not qualifying for the bracket stage, you can see, actually, interestingly enough, this is the first time we've seen kind of an outlier in terms of the scores between the qualifiers, where their farewell score was number 20, 1.8 million, and that's well far ahead of everything else that they've seen for the rest of their qualifiers.
It seems that Byfor now is primarily a 4-key player, so despite his high rank, he's not able to play 7-key as well. So in the scores, Paralit is doing very good scores, but Byfor now is sadly not keeping up, which resulted in such a low score for Singapore.
Yep, so Singapore will be knocked out in the qualifiers. Moving on to number 26, which will be Estonia, another 3-person team. All relatively high ranked, and again, that LN score on the release pick from qualifiers very high at number 18, as well as the density being number 21. A strong LN contender, just not being able to keep up when it comes to the hybrids and the rice maps.
Yes, it's very nice to see teams like Estonia, who are pretty much the underdogs of the tournament, to perform relatively well in the qualifiers. Of course, it's not enough for qualifying, but still, I guess no one would expect Estonia to be higher than, for example, Singapore or some other countries.
Yeah, beating out seven other teams in the qualifiers is sure to give you some kind of confidence boost, especially if you didn't have any in the first place. So, I'd love to see all these teams return, like I said, even stronger next year to hopefully try their chance again at qualifying. But with that, we'll move on to seed number 25, which is going to be Colombia, a team that had was it their debut during 4-key MWC this year? Or this previous tournament?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, another relatively new team performing pretty well. XNet and Hakare and Ago all being top 1,000 and Smachi not being too far behind. That second LN score, number 14. That's
suspiciously good.
Yeah, that is a very good score. And that would have been enough could be considered qualifying, So you see lots of different abilities from these players. But so far we haven't really seen a lot of the teams that have, we've seen in these seeds performing particularly well in the rice, which means that's kind of being the Achilles heel for a lot of these teams, where the rice is causing a lot of issues. But we'll move on to seed number 24. Getting closer and closer to that top 16 to qualify, but not qualifying here will be the United Kingdom in 24th. Again, quite strong LNs, and here we go with some stronger rice picks, just being dragged behind by some of the more difficult maps in the pool, the chord stream, the accuracy of the hybrids, and the very dense long note map.
This is a pretty interesting result, that the United Kingdom is the worst on hybrids, actually. This is something that I feel it's not very common in the tournament scene. Also, probably a bit of letdown, considering how relatively strong UK is on 4-key and how relatively low they placed on this year's qualifiers for 7-key.
Yeah, 4-key and 7-key don't necessarily translate the same way, and I don't think there are any team members transfer between 4-key and 7-key, so it's just kind of a different community there. But They will not qualify. They're going to be 24th seed. 7 more to go before we hit the qualifying teams. So 23rd seed is going to be Germany. Another team that has performed pretty well in the World Cup historically. They, like it says, 13th last year, which means they did make it to bracket stage in 2019. And this is looking like to be a pretty average performance along each of their maps, between 21 and 25 for every single one of the maps in this pool, which is a great show of consistency. They just need to push that skill up a little bit more.
Honestly, I can see it happening. I know some of German players they are pretty stably progressing, so maybe next year they can make it to the round of 16, because I already cannot beat some of those players' scores.
Yeah, and we're already getting to the point where seasoned 7-key players are having trouble beating the players who aren't even qualifying into the bracket stage. This tournament is pretty stacked as far as the teams go, and Germany is a strong team that just wasn't able to make the cut in this situation.
Absolutely.
So with that, number 22 seed is going to be the Netherlands, another historically pretty strong team, and another historically pretty well-performing 4-key team, but only making it into 22 seed this time. Not enough to qualify, but again, we're seeing some outliers with these players' scores, with these team scores. Number 11 on the release qualifier.
Yeah, as far as I know, Freak is so good at this map, and Tyronix also is a very good long player, so they certainly shined on the stage 4, but as you can see, both Ariane Hot and Sonic Bass were pretty relatively low scores, so they had some issues with the harder rise peaks.
Indeed. And we're also seeing kind of this difference between like the physical requirements that were needed for the qualifiers this time around, where Farewell being by far the easiest physically, allowing for teams to, kind of bump their seeding up where they aren't able to keep up with the maps later on, or the rice maps that are very, very dense and difficult. Following this, in seed number 21, it's going to be Sweden. I had to extend that until it switched over. Another team with relatively solid LN scores and some pretty good hybrid scores, falling a little bit short in the Rice section. Sadcat being very strong in 7-key, showing off some really incredible scores, but not able to carry his 2 teammates through to the qualifying rounds.
Yeah, I guess Sadcat must be pretty sad right now. Sorry for the joke.
It's okay. We tell jokes around here. Moving on to the final 4 non-qualifying teams at seed number 20. It's going to be New Zealand. Worm, Sparks, Cap, all very high ranked. Staying pretty consistent along them with good accuracy team. Getting that number 10 spot on stage 1. But not quite able to keep up with the LNs and hybrids, which ended up being their undoing here.
Yep, this is actually so polarizing. You can see that those long node maps, which are relatively easy on the raw skill required, they are either played very well by the lower rise skill level players and teams, and the other hand, teams that perform very well on rise cannot play those LNs at all, which might also be an indicator of how the pools will be interesting in that regard. Yeah, diverse skill sets.
Yeah, we are seeing a lot of, teams that require a lot of balance. Only having 4 players that you can have on your team can be very devastating, especially when you don't have enough. I mean, for New Zealand, they only have 3 players, which is enough of a handicap when you need as diverse of players as possible. But even just requiring 4 players to cover 3 very different categories of maps can be very difficult to muster up. But that's seed number 20. Moving on to seed number 19. It's going to be Argentina. This one came to a bit of a surprise to me, personally. I was very surprised to see Argentina not make it into the bracket stage. And you can see some really good scores. Stage 1, Stage 2, and Stage 7, all being extremely strong scores, all in the top 16. And The rest of them not too far behind. Looks like stage 5 and stage 4 being kind of their undoing when it came to, their bout for qualifying.
Yeah, unfortunately, they lacked some of the edge, especially on the farewell, which is pretty dragging the score down. They were very close, but yeah, as I say, next year it's quite probable that they can get in if they keep up the pace.
Yeah, lots of very good players on Argentina. Lucas, a beast at the game, both 4-key and 7-key. I wouldn't be surprised to see them come back next year even stronger. But with that, we'll move on to the last two. Seed number 18. It's going to be France. Elementaires, Antoine being very, very strong players. Great Hard Rock Charlie's backing them up, but not quite enough. Look at that Scarlet Tempest score. Number 6 on a map and not going to qualify for the bracket stage.
This is very surprising to me. It was probably one of the European teams I was expecting the most of the best rank, but actually they weren't able to qualify even with a phenomenal stage 2, which looks like it was like an SV map. It's something like this.
Yeah, it's a bit polarizing to see something like that. I think this is our first time seeing a team in the top 10 on anything as well, which we're getting to the point where we're having a lot of players who are very, very good, capable of getting very high scores on these maps.
Yeah, sadly the long notes were just not enough.
Yeah, not quite enough here. But moving on to the final non-qualifier for the Osumania 7Q World Cup 2022. Seed 17 is going to be Australia. I was sad to see this, honestly. Their scores are so consistent across the board. Number 11 on Intuition, number 11 on Arian Rod, top 16 on 2 other maps, and just barely outside on everything else, and not going to qualify.
Yes, this hurts. This is probably one of the biggest shocks I just seen. That's Australia was always good in terms of like 7-key play, and seeing them just barely miss the threshold is sad.
Sankansuki and Ruka are like household names in 7-key, but unfortunately they will not be performing in the bracket stage this year. But with that, we can start moving on to the 16 teams that qualified. I'm sure you've already marked down if you're on a team, you've already marked down whether you've seen your country listed yet, so you should know if you qualified, but the rankings are what are going to determine the brackets and the matches coming up, so keep an eye on these as well. Number 16 is going to be Switzerland, a 2-man roster, but what a 2-man roster it is! A Cairo and Gamer97, 2 more pretty household names as far as 7-key goes. And I'm honestly kind of surprised to see them this low, in the same way we've seen a lot of teams so far.
They don't need more people, and actually they kind of remind me of I think it was Philippines team for it was maybe a 7-key World Cup as well, but they had only 2 players and they were enough to place them quite high in the tournament.
Yeah. We've seen that quite a bit. Switzerland has done it before, I think, in the past. Chile did it in 2018, I want to say. Had 2 players and they made it all the way up to semifinals. So we're seeing teams that are just so capable with 2 players, and as small a roster as this is, they are qualifying, but unfortunately they'll have to face the number 1 seed, which we'll be coming to later.
Exactly. Akairo is such a beast in this team, and I expect them to fare relatively well on long notes.
Yep, but we can move on to seed number 15, which is going to be Taiwan. I think this is around what was expected for Taiwan for me and the people I was talking to, but still a very solid placement, 11th on that accuracy pick for the first one, and a qualifier that didn't get any top 10s, so they're just riding on that consistency here. Keeping within the 10 to 20 range and just staying there was enough for them to get themselves into that qualifying seed.
Yeah, very consistent across the board. And side note, I'm wondering how commentators will call the 4th player on this team, which has a pretty interesting nickname.
From what I've heard, people call them Barcode, so I'm going to stick with that if I have to commentate a Taiwan match.
Also a good idea.
But yeah, classic. Fola, Snow Rabbit, Hero Jeff, and barcode.
Yeah, all around pretty solid
there.
team, but at the same time their core stream score is pretty low, so I expect they might have some problems in early accuracy round.
Indeed, but we can start moving on to seed number 14, another historically strong team, but this year missing a key player in Stupid Man. But the United States will be number 14 seed, getting a very, very strong hybrid score on Hanamaganda, and staying within the top 16 on all of the maps in this pool, except for the 2 long notes, which they were just outside of.
This is also one of the surprises of this tournament, especially as USA is so good at 4K, and they, as Toph said, they lack Foam, Elah, which was, I'd say, key player, and with him the team would be very, very high in this tournament. We can expect actually them to be pretty all-rounded, with Alter of course carrying, but I think I also saw Turney getting a very, very good score on stage 4. So
yes, Turney is kind of that LN anchor that they needed to add on top of Teo and Revo just being all-rounded in general. But that is going to be seed number 14, and seed number 13 was kind of a surprise to me. I mean, I think it was to you as well, you said earlier.
Yes, let's go. It's actually fine that we are commentating together and our teams are like
back to back. Yeah, I got the US in 14th and Poland in 13th.
Yeah, but this team is pretty, I'd say, focused about Hudolnom at Ntiamakazi, with of course Hudolnom carrying, and especially good at Rise at Sea, I'd say, but yeah, Poland is quite strong this year, and they are pretty all-rounded, I guess.
Yeah, you can see that all-roundedness in their placements. Their lowest placement being number 17, very, very consistent across the board.
Yeah, I'm happy with this.
I would imagine you are, but we can start moving on to number 12. It's going to be the, if we can get it switched over, Russian Federation. Another very consistent team, but kind of showing their strengths on the long notes. Number 10 on both of the long note qualifiers, on top of that core string qualifier, number 10. And we're starting to get into those placements where people are starting to teams are starting to hold on to those very, very high placements here.
Yeah, both Mage and Legend 27 are very good long note players, so they have some O2 Jam career behind them. I think Illuminus also. And yeah, as you said, pretty well-balanced team with a slight of an edge on long note department.
Yeah, for sure. So we can expect to see like long notes coming out from them as far as, you know, their strategies as the map pools and the matches come out. But they're gonna probably have a bit of a tough time given that they're seed 12 facing next week the seed number 5, which might end up being a tall task. But all these teams are so good that I can't imagine them, you know, looking down on themselves for these matchups that they're going to be having.
I think this will be also very important with the second player, because most of those teams have a very strong one player and the second one which is a bit behind, and the second player might make a big difference actually.
Yeah, we'll have to see as the matches come out, but we can move on to seed number 11. It's going to be Japan. Quite another surprise. I think I saw a bunch of people expecting Japan to be a bit higher ranked than seed 11.
I honestly expected Japan to be like top 5, so seeing them relatively low in this qualifiers round is a big surprise for me, especially with players like Suzuha or Angel Koishi, which are
ranked number 6, ranked number 24 is kind of higher ranked people.
They are pretty much top tier.
Yeah, it looks like they kind of got knocked down. Their Scarlet Tempest, maybe they just had a couple bad runs, or they're just not that strong on speed. And then their long notes dragged them down pretty heavily. That stage 4, number 27.
I think that's
the strongest outcome.
Suzuha wasn't actually playing. Suzuha wasn't actually playing farewells for some reason. So, as we can see, they will have a pretty tough battle upcoming, because they will be facing a much higher seed than otherwise.
They'll be facing seed 6, which we'll come to later. But after this, we got seed number 10, which is going to be Chile. Again, a historically very, very strong team, qualifying around number 10. In one of the previous World Cups, they had a two-man team and were dominating with that two-man team. I believe both players, Gonzalou and Skalem, have returned. And I can expect them to kind of wreak havoc in this tournament.
Yes, especially that those two players, or actually whole team, but those two players in particular are very experienced, as you said, and they will have an easier time faring on those on this early round of 16, which is slightly easier than qualifiers. But we'll get to that, of course.
Yeah, and you can see from the qualifier scores that looks like their higher end rice, the chord stream especially is very, very good. But they're going to be really pumping it when it comes to the more dense picks. But that is our starter to the top 10 seeds. We'll have our number 9 coming up next, Brazil. And this, I mean, I'm saying a lot of things are a surprise at this point, because they are. This whole bracket stage has been very confusing to me. But Brazil getting number 9 seed without Lothis on the team was quite the shocker for me.
Yeah, Brazil is lacking a few key players, I'd say. They are lacking Lotus, they are lacking Casio. So those two players would have make a big difference, but they have to do what they have, and still they got 9 seeds, so it's still a good result.
Yeah, Lotus Fangirl obviously carrying their weight, and then there's Nate, Silly Fangirl, who is one of the best players in the world, at least in 4-key. 7-key is debatable, but he's still capable of carrying his team to that number 9 seed. And with this, we're actually going to be reversing into the top 8, where we'll be seeing the teams that the previous 8 seeds will be facing, starting with Brazil's opponent, seed number 8, Canada.
Are, I'd say, the biggest underdogs of the round of 16, because I think no one is particularly acquainted with those players, and they are actually very good players all across the board. It's one of the
lots of new names, lots of new players to the World Cup as mainstays on the team, but obviously they're here to play. Seed 8.
Yep, they are a very, I'd say, very well balanced team, and they have. It might not look like it, but they have quite a good edge on long notes. I know some of these players are very good out-jump players, and their long note control, especially on coordination, is very high.
Yeah, that consistency across everything. Well-rounded team, staying within from rank 7 to rank 13 for every single qualifier. Definitely very strong and well worth their number 8 seed. And we'll move on to the number 7 seed, the opponent of Chile for next weekend, Indonesia. A team that got the first number 1 we're seeing, actually. The number 1 on stage 7, the density long note pick. I think it's clear to see where they're going to be heading in terms of their own picks.
Yeah, I think it's no surprise that Indonesia is good at long notes, but I didn't expect getting them the number 1 on the stage 7. But it shows how good they are. And
very,
all
very
around,
strong.
maybe apart from their accuracy or technical abilities on stage 1, their scores are very good.
Yeah. I mean, but I think that kind of brings in a little bit of difficulty with the round of 16 map pool, which is going to be the easiest of the map pools we see, and Multiply being the most ACK-oriented, perhaps we'll see something interesting happening as far as that is concerned. But close seed matchup, Indonesia versus Chile for number 7 versus number 10, and we will move on to seed number 6, Spain, a popular little team here, ITAR98, a household name in 7-key, Quinella, Crew-K Fanboy, and Not PX. Very, very strong. All top 10 finishes for the qualifiers except for stage 5, which I went in seeing it as probably the most difficult overall, aside from maybe stage 8. But with someone like ITAR on your team, long notes are not going to be an issue. So Intuition, the hybrid, was probably not going to be the deal breaker on their side.
Yeah, exactly. This team is actually the best non-Asian team, so I wouldn't expect Spain at the first place in the 6th seed, but at the same time, look at their accuracy scores. They are very good tournament players, and they know their way how to beat teams.
Very dominant in the early rounds.
Yeah.
Not surprising from a team like Spain, but
I think they will face Japan. Yes. So this will be especially interesting.
Yes, they are facing Japan. That's a weird matchup. Spain versus Japan's a bit scary, but with only a round of 16, maybe you expect very, very tough matches to happen like that. But like you said, top 5 seeds are all Asian teams, as you might expect from 7 Key, and we'll be moving into the number 5 seed, Thailand. More household names. I think we can expect relatively household names as far as 7 Key is concerned with the following 5 teams. With Lost Cool and Miski both being very, very strong, very well known. The number 1 overall seed for the long note pool here, with number 2 and number 3 respectively on each of them, and their hybrids and Rice definitely not something to sneeze at either. Their worst score being on the density chord stream pick at number 11, but everything else above number 6.
This is definitely one of the teams to look after. They are very. I wouldn't say they are like top spot contenders, but Thailand is also always the team that you cannot just disrespect. They are very good, and those 2 players, especially Lostko and Miski, are very experienced and they know how to win. So especially in the long notes, those scores are extremely good.
Yeah, not something you want to mess with as Thailand. Their opponent, Russian Federation, going to be for next weekend. And we can move into the top 4, the quote-unquote top seeds, as you might consider it if we're dividing in the same way. But it's going to be the Philippines, not a surprise in the slightest at all. A very, very good historic 7 Key team. Second place in the previous World Cup that we saw, beating out China for that second place position, only being beaten by South Korea at that point. And a bit more well-rounded in terms of their placements. A little worse on LNs than we saw from Thailand, but significantly better on the Rice portion, getting second place overall for the Rice qualifiers. Only one team having been better than them in terms of their seeding there.
Honestly, Philippines are one of the best teams of this year, and it's even funnier that they elect 2 extremely good players, which are Berry and Tozer, who both couldn't play this year. And I would say they are one of the teams that can beat South Korea on long notes.
Well, I mean, you're also missing like Arkwin, who's not on the team.
Yes, Arkwin was.
Philippines is missing a bunch of players that have been like their rocks for years, and they're still 4th seed. What a deep roster this team has.
Yes, this is gonna be one of the teams to root for and keep an eye for, because I think they will be top spot contenders this year.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll be getting into our top 3 seeds here. Malaysia, number 3. I'm not surprised seeing names like Chiwi and Neokje on the team right there. Ziyuan and Eni backing them up. Number 2 on the hybrids, number 3 on the long notes, and number 4 on the Rice maps. Overall, no maps outside of top 10 for them. No maps outside of top 8 for them.
Yeah, this is a crazily good team, especially because of like Chewy and Noki expertise and their accuracy, their everything pretty much. They are very, I'd say, also long note focused. They are pretty the same spot as Thailand in terms of long notes, where they have very, very good auto-jump players. And they also have, you can see, they are very well rounded. Their hybrid scores are the best, actually. So, if anything, maybe some technical Reichs picks could have been somewhat problematic to them.
Indeed. And Malaysia's opponent next week, the United States. I forgot to say Philippines as well. Philippines is facing Poland. So we got Philippines, Poland, and Malaysia, United States for the first round next weekend. But we have 2 seeds left. We've got 2 teams left. For number 2, we have China. Shouldn't be surprising. China has always been incredible at this game. Top 4 on everything. Number 1 on the LN release qualifier, number 2 on the density chord stream qualifier, and number 3 and 4 on the rest of them. Insane team, has always been insane, has always been dominant. and I don't think they've ever not been top 3 in 7Q World Cup.
And it's really scary. And they have some players that are really top of the top in their league. Like Liayan is one of the best long nose players like ever in this game. And Turks is doing some very, very good Rise scores. He's one of the best BMS players at this time, especially in the Stella scale. And Satori is very seasoned player. Great accuracy, great long notes.
Like veteran of the game. He hasn't missed a beat since 2015. But that is our number 2 seed, and as many people probably predicted, we have our number 1 seed of South Korea, the first place finishers of 7Q World Cup 2017, 2018, and 2019. They're keeping their game strong. Number 1 on every Rice qualifier, and number 1 on Hanmakanda in the hybrid categories. Their only real weakness being that number 7 placement on the long notes. But that roster, Dresser, one of the strongest 7Q players I've seen in a long time, on the come up for a long time. Estonians, a veteran, and then YZ1155 and 0133 backing them up. Just like obviously they're destroying these qualifiers.
Yeah, like who wouldn't expect that South Korea will be the first seed, but at the same time we can see the long notes are their serious weakness.
There is a weakness that exists within them, so if anyone wants to beat South Korea, they're gonna have to approach it in the right way, and I think the right way is very obvious at this point.
Yeah, on the other side, Estonians is also very good at accuracy. I think he's made actually the best score on stage 6, which is around 997, I guess. So yeah, and he's also very good at long note accuracy, but they might lack a second player to back him up.
Indeed, but with that we have all of our matchups. I forgot to mention China's matchup. They will be facing Taiwan next weekend. South Korea will be facing Switzerland, the 16 seed. And that is going to complete our qualifiers results showcase. The top 16 teams will be coming back next weekend to face off in a bracket stage, a double elimination bracket stage. So no team will be knocked out completely next week, but we will get to see an all-out brawl between many of these teams and get to really see them perform on stream, because since we didn't get to watch them play their qualifiers this weekend.
Yeah, this is going to be very exciting. There are lots of, I'd say, unpredictable matchups, which will be very exciting to watch.
Indeed, I am very excited. But with that, we are done with the showcase for the qualifier results, and we can move on to the round of 16 Mappool showcase, which I'm kind of interested to see. I went through all these maps earlier, and this Mappool is hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
A lot harder than I expected. And
At the same time,
harder I think most people expected.
I'd say it's going to scale a bit hard, but at the same time, for those teams, these maps aren't as hard as you might think. They are very hard to perform consistently on, so it's not easy to like double S every map, even for the top teams. But at the same time, they aren't like very hard, so like every team should be able to fare relatively well on them. It's going to be the edge who can full combo the maps, who can keep good accuracy on the maps.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be the most accuracy-oriented round out of all of them, which, you know, we saw some good accuracy teams. South Korea, I mean, it's South Korea, but they did keep their accuracy as high as possible for literally everything on the Rice department, and we're seeing a lot of teams that are capable of really just pushing their accuracy as high as possible, and they're going to need to keep that up. Whether they can keep combo on them is another thing, and I don't really know, because these maps are not the easiest to keep your full combos consistent on, unless you're like insane at the game.
I'd say every map has some trick into it, and I would also say that these maps are very diverse, so that every team might find something they will excel at, and other teams will absolutely hate that map. There are some easier and harder picks, but all in all, this is roughly a stable level of difficulty.
Yeah, and with that, we can move into our first pick for the round of 16 in the 7Q World Cup. Our first map that we're seeing non-qualifier is going to be Lauer Attractor Dimension. We're going to be starting off with some Rice, and this is going to be as straightforward as it gets. This is the speed map. 290 BPM, OD of 8, 2.5 minutes long.
Yeah, I'd say it's one of the trickier picks in the pool, mostly because those streams are pretty fast and they are pretty tricky at times. They feature some tech-like patterning. They're very, I'd say, pleasant to hit, but at the same time, it's not very easy to keep accuracy on.
Yeah, I'd say that this is definitely, like, as far as your like physical ability required, this might be not as hard as some of the other picks, or at least when we're talking about reading and keeping things together. This might not be the hardest, but it is going to be one of the harder ones to keep accuracy on, just because of the broken nature of some of these patterns and some of the real difficulty that comes along. Later, around halfway through, there's some jacks at 145, well, not jacks, trills at 145 BPM, which is not trivial at all.
Yeah, this is especially you need to watch for these flams, which are very or sweeps that are very fast and they can cause some accuracy problems, as well as some patterns that get a bit cramped in the second section. This is probably one of the hardest sections in the map.
Yeah, we're halfway through that map, and this ending gets it spikes a little bit in density. The amount of doubles and triples that are in the quick 290 BPM streams actually increases, so there's going to be quite a bit of density increase. Even though it's kind of like broken streaming, you still have to focus a lot on it.
Exactly, it's a very, I would say it's one of the riskier picks overall in this pool. Especially with how it's like difficult to keep constant accuracy on and how it's easy to miss on some of these sections, especially with broken streams.
Indeed, and some of these sweeps can be a little bit hard on the accuracy to farm. I think they're a little bit faster than 290 BPM as well, the sweeps in part like those, but hitting those shouldn't be an issue for it. It's just keeping accuracy, and I think accuracy is the name of the game on something like this. You have to be very confident in your accuracy to pick something like this into your opponents.
Yeah, the ending is pretty interesting, but at some time it's very easy to combo, so it's just like accuracy game at this point.
Indeed. And number 2, we're getting some long notes. We're starting off with the release pick in the pool. Name Surfchu85, map creator M2U Yoake no Uta, featuring Dasby. And if you've seen Surfchu, you should remember his charts from previous 7-key World Cups, early round releases. It's just that. I mean, this is a collab between him and Maple Syrup, but it does have that same kind of style as we've seen from Light and Baby Tree, and maps like that we've seen in the past. Just a little bit harder than those, since this round is definitely quite a bit harder than what we've seen in previous years.
Yeah, this is more like of a long note release pick, mostly focused on long note accuracy and consistency, and also I would say it's one of the easiest long note picks. Maybe not the easiest, but on the easier side of long note picks in this pool.
Depending on your skill set, if you're good at coordination and releases, this probably is the easiest LN pick out of all of them. That said, it's not easy to get the releases down correctly. It's just, the physical requirement isn't that high, and if you're able to coordinate your fingers enough, it's definitely easier than the other coordination pick we have in store later on.
At the same time, the star rating is pretty low. Not as low as the other coordination pick, but I'd say this is more focused on the release and control. So
yeah.
So it's not very easy to coordinate this map.
Also noteworthy, this is just over 3 minutes, 3 minutes and 12 seconds. So you do have to keep up this release and coordination for quite a while. What I will say is that the map is quite enjoyable. I'm going to say that. Coming from Release Man, maybe that doesn't say much, but as far as release maps go, and for 7-key, keeping coordination heavy, It is quite fun, so I think maybe that 3 minutes won't really matter, especially for the players who enjoy these kinds of charts.
Exactly, you can see also OD7, so while there are some stereo reads, as you can see, it's not as harsh on accuracy as you would expect from the release peak. Certainly because this is quite an early round, so it's not very harsh on the accuracy, even though it's a release map. So
yeah,
also the song is very nice.
I do, yeah. The song is quite calming, quite nice. And I think what is going to separate this from the other coordination LN pick that we have later on is that there's a lot more disjointed releases here. Whereas the other one, not quite disjointed, but very difficult in its own way.
Exactly. Like this map is focused more on like the end of the long note, in comparison to other picks which are focused more on like either the body, which is coordination, or the head, which is the long note density, which we'll get into later. Also, Scheme God has a pretty fast scroll speed, so you might feel this map is harder than it actually looks like.
Yeah, and that is going to finish off the chart, and we are 2 in, and we've had 1 rice, 1 long note, and we're getting our first hybrid, the longest map in the pool, not counting the tiebreaker. 4.5 minutes. Have fun.
Yeah, this map is actually loved, and this is one of the, I'd say, longest and maybe hardest to full combo maps in the pool. It's like mostly a consistency / difficulty hybrid.
Yeah, and right here is, I mean, this map is, when I was looking through the map roll, I was getting the feeling in the first 2, like, oh, the difficulty of this is about what I expected, and then this hit me like a truck. Like, this is physically, like, well, reading-wise, it's very difficult, but physically, it's also quite a bit more difficult than what we've seen so far. The speed map really being a reading and accuracy test more than anything, this one really pushes the density to the limits of what it really can.
Yeah, especially that is quite long. It's sort of like mini tiebreaker in the pool. It's not quite the same because it's more focused on rice instead of long notes, but still, it's something similar. But yeah, this map is very demanding in terms of that it changes every few seconds, so there are many different patterns, and even though there isn't like a single hardest pattern in the map, this is very hard to keep accuracy and combo on like every single thing this map has to offer.
Yeah, and what I'd say about this is that it's definitely the map that you need to be the most well-rounded to perform on, because it just throws so much at you. In over 4 minutes, of course it's going to throw as much as it can at you.
Yep, this is, as I said, mostly one of the harder picks in the pool actually, because of how long and how technical it becomes at times. But at the same time, yeah, I think it's maybe a pretty good showcase of teams that are good at consistency.
Right, I think this actually might end up being so. When we're thinking about like teams that would pick something like this in a pool, it's definitely going to be those teams. Obviously, the ones that are strongest at hybrids are going to want to go with something like this. But really, it's going to be the really strong teams who want higher level maps to play. The higher seeded teams, I think, are going to be really partial to picking something like this, just because of how difficult and all over the place and explosive this map is in every single way.
I would say this is maybe you have an easy edge over other teams, but at the same time, if there would be 2 relatively strong teams facing each other, I would say this is one of the riskiest picks because it's so unpredictable.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting place when we see those like middle seeds sort of duking it out, like 8 versus 9, 7 versus 10. Those kinds of matches is where this kind of map might be really the decider of who wins those matches. And
yes,
we've been talking a lot, and we're still only 2/3 of the way through, so there's still a lot that we have to get through.
Yeah, there was this pretty hard rice section, which we just saw, which was probably one of the harder parts of the chart. And yeah, this is, I don't expect many teams to pick this like straight away. I think it would be like one of the decider picks when teams don't have anything better to pick.
Yeah, it's like a secondary comfort pick almost, and like I said, I think it's really for those teams that are super confident in their capabilities overall. So like the higher seed teams would probably put this after the picks that either they find the most interesting or would suit them the best.
Yeah, this is maybe I say because I don't think we've mentioned that there will be 14 maps in total, including tiebreaker, so like 13 normal maps, and the round of 16 is straight best of I think best of
9. It should be best of 9, or is it best of 11?
Best of 11, I think it's like up to 6 wins.
Best of 11 sounds right with the map pool size, so I'm going to go with that.
So we will have some pretty lengthy matches from the beginning, but it's expected because it's starting from round of 16, not round of 32.
Round of 16 and quarterfinals both going to be about best of 11, then semifinals, finals, best of 13, right? Yeah, no, sorry, that was wrong. Best of 11. No, I am right. It is best of 13. Finals and grand finals are going to be best of 13 as well.
You spoiled it, yes. Okay,
so I'm not saying anything about any pools. I'm saying that the grand final stage is always best of 13 anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyways, back to Rice. We got some speed quarter stream picks here. Cosmo Vusup Oceanus uprated to 210 BPM.
Yes, this is the ranked map, but not quite. This has some small changes, but overall, yes, it's the like say speed cold stream pick. So not the very usual cold stream. It's a lot less dense and a lot faster. It's 210 BPM straight in the round of 16. And as you can see, there are some very fluent patterns that are just... I would say this is kind of like pick that 4-key players would like if they played 7-key, because it's pretty fast. So 4-key players like faster maps, and players that can play both of those key modes probably will excel at this kind of Rise. Yeah, this map is pretty standard, like there is not very much going on except like this whole lot of broken cold stream, which is very fluent and very easily patterned. It's mostly the speed test and a bit of density, but some thrills, nothing very special. I guess it would be hard to keep accuracy on, because it's not easy to time those faster streams and thrills.
Yeah, it's going to be something like between what we saw in the first map. We saw the speed map of 290 BPM, but it's going to have those, doubles, triples, quads, really spiking up the density a little bit, even though it's a bit slower. So it really just tests your ability to keep accuracy when the speed goes down with, a slightly higher density.
Yeah, this pick can be either very hard or very easy, depending on what team picks it and what team plays it, because there are teams that will be very good at Rise and they will just destroy this pick, and there are teams that will be weaker at Rise and they will avoid this at any cost.
Yeah, and that's going to be ending our fourth pick. Back into some more long nodes. We've got our density pick for this pool. The most dense map, obviously, as far as the long notes are concerned. And this intro is pretty straightforward, I'd like to say, as far as density is concerned anyways. But we're really going to be worrying about the spiciness of the density is in the second half.
Yeah, this map is a long node density pick, and it's quite a low OD of 6 and 6.5, which will be pretty much trend for most of long node picks in this tournament, except some selected few. But yeah, this is pretty standard 156 core stream, not a very long pick. I'd say it's one of the easier picks, but at the same time it requires some pretty good reading to keep up with all of those core streams, which have varying lengths of long nodes. Also, there are some patterns in the second half that might be quite tight to actually execute, so there might be some random misses, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, this second half is definitely spicing things up a little bit. The density kind of spikes a little bit more than we saw in the first half, but it's still kind of the same style as we're seeing, just with some more long nodes extended as we're getting further on in the chart.
Yes, I would say this is probably the easiest long node pick for teams that aren't very good at long nodes, especially. It's the least long node map of all the long node maps, I would say. Mostly because
definitely.
It's based on like chord streaming, so...
Yeah, like the accuracy isn't going to be like... If you just play it as chord stream and are able to like notice when the long notes get extended, your accuracy is not going to be stunted that much. You're just going to be outscored by teams that are capable of, you know, reading through and releasing at the right times. It's just kind of that small difference, but it's going to be a more approachable kind of pick for very rice-focused teams.
Exactly.
And we'll move into pick number 6, Tenku no Yoake, another hybrid that we're seeing here. This one is a little bit interesting to me because it's quite LN heavy throughout much of it, but there's lots of different parts of it that kind of switch on and off between, you know, lighter LNs and then heavier LNs and, you know, very, very dense patterns.
Yes, this hybrid is pretty difficult in the way that it features long node patterns and rice patterns, and each of them is pretty difficult on their own. There is, like, if you are good at rice but bad at long nodes, you will struggle, and the same is true if you are good at long nodes and bad at rice, because this map combines both of these, and either at the same time, as you can see with this bears, or with lighter parts which have like long node streams, which are pretty dense.
Yeah, and we're seeing that kind of switch between, you know, rice and LN difficulty between even measures here, where the chord stream happens and there's a set of long notes and then there's a stream right there, a very quick stream, and it just goes back and forth. And it's very much a tester of, are you good at long notes? Are you good at rice? Are you good at both of them, but not at the same time necessarily?
Yeah, this is actually not a very difficult pick per set for players, because the density is noticeably high, but it isn't very not standard apart from this. This map doesn't have many tricks besides maybe some occasional jacks. But at the same time, I believe it will be difficult to high score this map, because there is a lot of places that can trip up your accuracy, especially those jacks.
Yeah, and we're getting into the ending here. This last quarter actually is, I think, a little bit easier than the rest of the chart. So if you get here with a good score, you're pretty much home free, but that's not to say that it's completely free. Those jacks, the shields, I should say, into those long notes can be kind of tough, but the density kind of decreases here, and the patterns get a little bit easier up until the end.
Yeah, this is, I would say, like the middle map of the pool in terms of difficulty. It's not very hard, but it's not very easy either.
Lots of stuff going on, for sure. And we're about to hit the halfway point of the pool. My favorite mapper in the world, COD2 Jr. is back yet again. I've missed him so much.
I think he's pronounced like Bank Selk or something.
I know it is, but I'm going to pronounce him COD2 Jr. because that is my legacy.
Yeah, someone pronounced him like God tier, so I don't know.
I know technically it's Bangsuk. I think that's how it's supposed to be pronounced. I'm calling him COD2 Jr. because this guy is iconic and his name is funny.
Yeah, going back to the map, it's probably the easiest map in the pool in terms of rice. It's also the most straightforward map because it's a denser cold stream peak. It's quite slow, but at the same time it's pretty dense, and it gets even denser in the second half. Yeah. And it's actually in like fourth rise done, so you might know it from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just chord stream. It's what you expect from the mapper. And it's pretty constant. You get this one break in the middle, but after that you get some split chord stream, and then the ending just blasts you again.
Yeah, this map is all about control and accuracy. I would say this is the most accuracy-focused pick, except for maybe one, but definitely the easiest map, I would say. So this might be interesting for some teams that aren't especially good at like density stuff, except that this is constant density. But yes, this will be probably the accuracy go-to pick, which is the less stressful, I'd say.
Yeah, I would definitely say this is like a stress-free pick, sort of. Because once you get teams that are like good enough to really score well on something like this, and you know, you put them against each other, this doesn't become a stress-free pick anymore. It becomes an act battle. And I don't know if some of these teams want to fight an act battle in these early rounds.
Yeah, this might be either a first pick by some teams or like something avoided at all costs because of how unpredictable the accuracy might be between those teams.
Yeah, and that marks the halfway point. We'll be getting into the second half of the map pool, starting with the Korjak map, mapped by the Dark Dragon, 209 BPM, lost memory on 1.1 rate. 209 BPM is not the fastest as far as Korjaks go, but with how dense the 7-key mode can get, I will not mention how dense it can get. It can make things pretty difficult.
Yep, I would say this map is quite a weird spot because this is the previous map was the second easiest accuracy. This is the most easy to accuracy map in the pool, but at the same time it is so much riskier than the core stream map because the first half is filler here, but the core jacks become quite dense and they are not very easy to hit, especially when if you miss one you can cost your team a victory.
Yeah, I mean, this is just going to be ACK central. People are going to be scoring extremely well on a map like this, just based on the nature of core jacks in general. And as we said, this first half is pretty much filler, but we'll be getting into the jacks going a bit faster once this finishes up.
Yeah, this map, yes, this is probably the easiest map for the best teams, but at the same time, if you cannot full combo this, it will be a very bad pick. For example, I think this is one of the hardest maps in the pool for me because those jacks aren't very fast, but they are quite dense, and it's so easy to like miss at any single point.
It's a kind of map. I mean, core jacks are kind of this way in general, but it's a map that you can either do or you can't, and there's no real in between.
Yeah, so this might be very risky, and even if you have a very good personal best on this map, it might not be like your comfort zone pick because of how easy it is to trip up on this.
Yeah, tripping up is definitely going to be an issue, I think, for some teams. But we're seeing already in this replay made by the missing United States player, Stupidman, 99.95% accuracy. So if you're capable of this, you're going to probably get a really, really, really high score, which also makes it very, very risky for some teams that don't want to, have that ACK battle, don't want to allow other teams to get an edge on them based on just, core jack accuracy.
Same time, I think like we can expect some pretty nice scores from like South Korea team, which has very good accuracy players. So I'm expecting them to maybe look at this pick.
Yeah, and that's going to finish off pick number 8. Pick 9, Himaboshi, mapped by you. You might as well take this over.
Yes, this is a remake of the map I mapped previously. It's a least dense map in the pool. It's the most evil one, I would say. This is the long node coordination pick, which has, I would say, 2 major sections which focus on different long node combinations. It's very, I would say, straightforward, but at the same time, players that cannot play long nodes like this will absolutely struggle with this, and this is probably a ban material for people that cannot play this.
I'm gonna guess that this is gonna get banned a lot next weekend. Just having played it,
you either can do it very well or you can do it at all. And
it's another pick like core jacks where you do it or you don't, and there's not much in between.
Yes, this is a baby Avril pick because everyone knows that there is only one long node coordination map in the world, and this is Avril's the 14th.
Avril 14.
So yes, every map like this will be showcased as a different version of Avril. This is baby Avril.
Truly.
Or core Avril, yes.
2.4 star Avril. Actually, Avril's already pretty low star rating, but this is just kind of in the same style.
Yeah, but this is the first section of this map, which is, I would say, it's ending. You have some briefer here, some, like, say, filler accuracy. And the second part is more focused on, like, very slow inverse, which is, again, not very hard. It's, like, very easy for out-jump players, but at the same time, people who aren't acquainted to this type of long nodes will have a very bad time.
And there's not really much else to say about something like this. It's sort of similar to the Surf Chew Maple Syrup collab we saw earlier, but like I said, it's not really disjointed releases. It's just coordinating your, switching fingers and holding down certain notes while you have to let go of others. It's very complicated. it's a lot more complicated than it looks on stream. I will say that much.
Yep, it's especially difficult to release all the fingers properly, because pressing the notes is one story, but actually releasing correct fingers is more difficult than it looks like, especially this last section, which features a pretty big release here.
Yeah, I mean, being able to coordinate these kinds of LNs is something that many people would probably never hope to be able to reach. Like 990K on that, I think, might actually be one of the highest scores we see on it, even next weekend. If we see it at all, like I said, it's a very, very high, like, ban bait kind of map, you know?
Probably, although I wouldn't say this is the hardest long note pick. We have something different in the pool, but again, we won't spoil anything yet.
We sure do, but number 11 is going to be our second to last rice pick. A mixed rice map, Bamani Sound Team, Taro Kimi wo Koeta, OD8. Just, wait, I'm on the wrong map.
We are at White Rose.
I'm on the wrong map. How did that happen?
Yes, so this is a hybrid. This is the first hybrid. I would say this is the most technical kind of hybrid, because it's kind of similar to the first map, the Gunkyo Soteki, but it's much shorter and it has quite some surprising patterns in the second half, which are pretty difficult to execute. This is actually pretty dense as well. So yeah, OD is a little high, I would say, for this kind of map, but at the same time, there aren't, apart from like the choke points, there isn't very difficult stuff to time at. So yeah, this is mostly like long note with rice, and both long notes and rice are pretty wonky at times, especially in the second half.
Yeah, this is, I think, another one of those maps that's kind of like physically pretty straightforward, but the rhythmic changes throughout the entire thing really kind of can do a number on your accuracy, and especially with the intertwined bursts and jacks throughout.
Especially you can see those rhythm changes and those bursts and some mini jacks, yeah. Yeah, this like split trill is pretty interesting and may cause some accuracy issues. And those long notes aren't very easy either. They can be very difficult for teams that cannot like play them consistently.
Yeah, definitely. And this ending is a little bit more difficult than it looks. Like, those are pretty short LNs, but they aren't the easiest to read through.
Exactly. Again, expect some accuracy issues. Even if someone can full combo this map, it won't be easy to high score it.
Yeah, for sure. But okay, now we're on the right pick. I'm in the right place now. Tataru Kimi no wo Koeta, OD8, just over 2 minutes. Mixed rice. This has some of the most interesting patterns in, well, I don't know if interesting is the right word. I'm just jacks. Jacks at 160 BPM in round of 16. Not sure what else to say about that. There's a lot of dense forward stream, but the most fun part to watch in this is definitely those very, very fast jacks.
I would say they aren't very difficult, except maybe when they are linked with different patterns, in which we'll see in a while. But this is a mixed rice pick, which is probably the densest and most difficult map in terms of raw skill in this pool, which might be problematic to some teams which aren't very good at rice, but at the same time, if you are good at rice, it's probably one of the most comfortable picks here, because it's quite comfortable and it doesn't have very many like choke points.
Yeah, it's pretty like constant. I mean, outside of the break, of course, but it's a relatively constant amount of difficulty that's thrown at you all the time. You just kind of got to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's as I said, it's quite difficult, but once you can play it, you can play it. And yeah, there are some streams, some core streams, some bursts, some jacks. Probably the hardest part of the map is right here, with those streams combined with like fast triple jacks.
Yeah, having to go between those fast streams and then transitioning into the triple jacks is not going to be very friendly to some of these players. Oh yes, and a reminder, this is round of 16, so there are at least a few more pools that we have to get through that are going to be significantly harder than this.
Yeah, but the song is a banger. I really much enjoy the song. And the map, yes, the Gudan made a great job.
Yeah, and there we go. That's our second to last rice pick. We've got one more, which is coming up right here. This is another one that I've considered not particularly hard physically, but the patterns in it will do a number on your accuracy. Sanji Junihun by Evening, a map by Evening. So this is going to be an evening style map, as you might expect from hearing that name. But OD 8.5, this is the tech pick, and it's going to be very bursty. It's going to be like a dumpy burst kind of map.
This map is interesting because it's OD 8.5, which probably is the highest in this pool, and at the same time it's not very hard to accuracy because these patterns, those bursts are so fluent. But yeah, this is the tech pick, and actually Evening is the one playing the map on the showcase. This is his replay, and by the way, I have some personal message from Evening about this map. He wants to showcase, to shout out, give 2 shoutouts to Hoshimashi Susei from Whole Life, and to Ganyu from Genshin Impact.
Oh my god. I don't right, Evening. Hijacking our showcase to shout out a Genshin Impact character and a VTuber.
Yes, anyway, this is a very good map. This actually not very hard until like this part, which you can see now, which has some pretty fast bursts with different snaps, which with pretty uncomfortable jacks coming up, especially those jack bursts, which probably will be the hardest part to full combo. Yeah, this is a bit like dump style, but at the same time it's techy enough to be considered like a full tech pick, which also stands out from the rest of this pool because of how like irregular it is. The second half is noticeably harder, especially the ending bursts, which we'll see in a moment.
Yeah, I think one of the more interesting things to worry about is that there's lots of like reversing patterns in it where you'll be doing like a sweep type pattern in one direction and have to turn around and do like a kind of trill on the outside fingers, which can be a little bit hard to coordinate in some situations, but definitely can be hard to be good accuracy on with like how complex the rhythms are of the bursts.
Yeah, this is pretty much like the evening style pattern. He likes very flowy, very stirry patterns.
Yeah, the evening classic, as I said in the qualifier showcase when the Techno Planet map was being showcased.
Exactly. You can also watch out for these like outer ring twirls, which happen sometimes between the transitions in the flowing streams. Yeah, and this part is very difficult to actually execute.
Yeah, that nice density spike right at the end to just throw people off.
It's very comfortable to hit, but you need to make sure you hit that density correctly.
Definitely, and with that we have one more regular map in the pool to showcase before...
No, one, yes. It's...
Yeah. What? I'm sorry?
Yeah, this is the one, yeah.
Yeah, oh, this is the hard LN map. This is very, very weird. LN Mixed. Ohio. A nice United State of America. OD 7.5. I think this is this K-pop? Is this Korean? Is that what I'm listening to here?
Kinda. This is the long note mixed pick, and I think it's the hardest pick in the pool as well, in terms of like long notes, because it's very complex. There are patterns which change every few seconds, and they are very different from each other. There is everything in this map, so I would say pick this only if you are very comfortable at any kind of long notes.
Yeah, and what we'll kind of see, we have these kind of like coordination-esque, but also kind of dense patterns, and soon through this map we'll be getting some like inverse-esque patterns, which is kind of interesting, something we haven't seen in any of the other long note picks we've seen, but it's kind of something that we'll probably be slowly pushing more of as the pools get harder, because inverse is, it's not something that you see all the time, right?
Yeah, this is actually inverse parts are probably one of the trickiest elements of this map, because there are some patterns which like you need to like hold some LNs and then do a quick bursts from the other columns, and this is very easy to like mistakenly press the wrong finger. This will be this section.
Yeah, right here. There's some weird bursts with some kind of inversey patterns. Not full inverse or anything like that, but definitely have to transition between a lot of different keys at once. And these bursts continue where it gets a little bit less dense, at least LN-wise for the last third, but those bursts will maintain themselves.
Yeah, as I said, this is probably the hardest long note pick, and it's quite dense, it's quite complicated, and it's also quite difficult to time properly, especially those releases.
Definitely. Not to mention that this is the longest of the long note picks. Not by a whole lot. It's by a couple of seconds. 3 minutes and 9 seconds. Just barely longer than our release pick that we saw earlier. But still, being required to do a lot of different types of LN patterns, and especially as hard as these ones are for 3 straight minutes, not really the easiest thing. Not really something you're always going to want to do, especially with nerves that are going to be coming with the match lobbies.
Yes, this is another section which is pretty difficult to execute. It's like the previous one with the inverse long notes, but we've also added even more long notes on the top. And those rise bursts which are pretty easy, I would say, but if you want to play them and long notes at the same time, you need to focus a lot.
Yeah, the ending is pretty much a little bit lighter in terms of the long notes, so you just kind of have a way to get out of, or a way to cool down from the rest of the map with some slight coordination, but not something that I think people are going to have trouble with in comparison to the rest.
Yeah, also shoutouts to 0133, the real one, of course.
The real one, yes, thank you. Redacted. Anyways, that's going to finish off our free mod pool, and with that we have one map left in the entire pool, our tiebreaker. It's going to be a song that many people probably know, Nekomata Garden, NVIDIA. 5 minutes, 10 seconds, OD of 7.6, so not the highest of ODs. And at 134 BPM, we've got our final map in the pool. This intro is really long, I'll say that. It's like 30, 45 seconds, so a good fifth of this map is essentially nothing. But once we get into the meat of it...
Yes, it's played by handsome guy, as you can see. And this map is a tiebreaker which is pretty, I would say, difficult to categorize, because this is pretty much long notes coming at the player all the time, but at the same time they aren't very difficult actually. They are mostly like the accuracy element, and there are very difficult rise bursts scattered throughout the entire chart, also with some pretty hard one-handed trills that are repeating throughout the cross sections, as you just seen one early.
Those one-hand trills come back quite often throughout this, especially when the choruses come around. But the verses are going to be kind of like chord streamy with long notes that just kind of serve as accuracy walls in a certain way. The choruses kind of get a little bit more difficult than LNs and the density, but also have these small sections where very, very fast bursts and text sections start to come in. And we'll especially start seeing those text sections, in the second half of the chart with the solo, but those long notes really never leave your side.
Yes, they are pretty much tiring to hit, especially that there are some patterns which you can you have to actually hold some of them, so it's not like you can just autopilot press everything, tap everything like it's like a rise, because you also need to have some coordination, and those bursts are like every single second, so a lot of focus is needed for the tiebreaker.
Yeah, and we'll be coming up to the first chorus very shortly where those trills start to happen, but the extended trill sounds in the song actually aren't trills, luckily. Don't have to do one-hit trills, they're just kind of quick bursts, what I was talking about, the denser LNs right here. And this chorus happens twice in this map, so this is the first time. The ending has another one, and then there's kind of a mini chorus in the middle where the same sounds-ish happen, but it's a lot lighter, so you don't have to worry too much about doing this more than just the twice.
Yeah, the choruses are pretty much the hardest parts of this map, and for good reason. Lots of jacks and bursts combined with those long notes. You can see even handsome guy missed once on those. And some inverse sections, I would say. yeah, this map has pretty much everything, and nothing doesn't really explore anything very well. So I would say it's like a mix of everything.
Yeah, I'd say this is kind of like it's a constant hybrid for most of the map, and besides like very small like sections, like 1 or 2 measure long sections where heavily focused on LNs at a time, or heavily focused on like a burst or difficult tech and chord streams, you know? So it's just kind of like, it goes from a hybrid to a pure rice, and then back to a hybrid, and then into pure LNs, and kind of does that a few times throughout the map.
Yeah, it's also pretty underrated, and definitely a lot harder than the like hybrid pick of this pool, the Gunkyou Seteki. Mostly because of how technical it is, and how like the long notes aren't actually skippable in this map.
Yeah, that OD 7.6 is not going to be super helpful for your, a little bit easier than what you'd expect from it. Like OD 8, you know, is kind of like the average, but not too much leniency, especially with, you know, given how many LNs, that can be definitely a difficult thing to push accuracy on, and, you know, with how good many of the teams are. If they go to tiebreaker, they're going to want as high of accuracy on this as possible.
Yeah, those trios are really packing up momentum right now. They are also all the same time at columns like 1, 3, and 5, 7, so probably you might want to mirror some of them, because most of them happen on like right hand in this map, and they always happen on the like index and ring finger.
Yeah, so mirror, definitely a suitable option for a map like this, where, you know, those trills are biased towards one of your hands. But we are approaching the end. It kind of cools down after this. It gets a lot lighter, a little bit more straightforward to hit. I mean, some plans, but not too much to worry about. Just gets a little bit lighter here, and then we'll be closing out the chart in the next about 15 seconds.
Yeah, from my personal experience, this chart is like, I don't pay too much attention to the long notes for the most part, but at the same time I've heard opinions that the long notes are the hardest part of this chart, so it's really divisive towards certain types of players, I would say.
Gonna be an interesting test to see who out of the teams that go to tiebreak are gonna, you know, be more worth staying in the winner's bracket, and that's kind of what you're supposed to. It's kind of what a tiebreaker is supposed to do: show who of a given team fits better in, you know, the winner's bracket, or just moving on in one part of the tournament. But that's going to finish off the round of 16 map pool. The first one that will actually be seeing players play on stream. We've got 8 matches slated for next weekend, where these players will be facing off with these maps. And I'll just quickly go over the 8 matches that we'll be seeing once again. We've got South Korea versus Switzerland. We've got China versus Taiwan. Malaysia versus the United States. Philippines versus Poland. Thailand versus the Russian Federation. Spain versus Japan. Indonesia versus Chile, and Canada versus Brazil as our 8 matches. None of these 16 teams will be eliminated. 8 will be moving on in the winner's bracket. 8 will be knocked down into the loser's bracket, where all of them will face once again in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, there is gonna be a lot of interesting matches next weekend, so be sure to tune in to the stream and to watch them. And to the players, good luck in this pool. This is the easiest pool you will play, so
yeah,
so
have fun while it lasts.
While you look at exactly.
Have fun while the maps are still easy to full combo and good accuracy on, I say in quotation marks. But yeah, I'm very excited to see the matches that are coming up, and I'm excited to see how these players perform against each other on this map pool, and for the quarterfinals map pool, which all of them will be playing as well. Do you have anything else to say?
Well, I think this is everything. You have seen the pool. Good luck to everyone who has come to the round of 16. Good luck next year to everyone that hasn't passed the qualifiers. And I hope you enjoy the pool. You can leave some feedback if you want. And yeah, good luck.
Yeah, good luck to all the players. Have fun, and make sure to come back next weekend, where we will be streaming all 8, hopefully, of these matches. The schedule will be released very soon on the wiki. But with that, we will be closing out the stream for this weekend, the qualifier results and the Mappool showcase. We hope to see you both So both. See you all next weekend for the matches and the quarterfinals Mappool Showcase. We'll see you guys later.
Bye bye.